Well, 2017 saw a mix of decent profits, but bad PR for the aviation industry, especially here in the US. Now, this year is supposed to be a good year financially for the industry, with an anticipated 4 billion passengers worldwide. To discuss the aviation sector's outlook, I'm joined by Seth Kaplan. He's managing partner and editor of Airline Weekly. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be here, Rochelle.
So give us an overview. How is the global aviation industry doing as a whole?
It's doing rather well. It's had some excellent years, and all signs pointing now toward this 2018 being another excellent year. What's changed over the past decade or so are the regions where airlines are doing well. You go back, a decade, and U.S. airlines certainly weren't doing all that well overall. Now they are the leaders in the world. European airlines, perhaps even more surprisingly, if you go back just a few years, are doing very well too, with European economies doing rather well. It's other parts of the world where airlines are, although in many cases doing well, not doing as well because of a lot of competition.
Now, something that always makes headlines is safety. And we know that President Trump tweeted that 2017 was the best and safest year on record, and that's according to Flight Safety Foundation's research. But he also said he was touting his strictness on commercial aviation. Now, it could be interpreted as two separate issues, but some people thought he was trying to imply that thanks to his strategies, that's what made the airlines so safe. Is there any correlation?
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where he would probably be embarrassed about what he tweeted if he were capable of being embarrassed about something like that. You know, around the world, it's true there were no fatalities on commercial airlines, and that's rare. But in the U.S., which, if you want to carry the logic and even say he has anything, very much to do with safety in the U.S., there hasn't been a fatality on a commercial airliner since 2009. That was a turboprop plane. You have to go all the way back to 2001 to find what we call a mainline aircraft, a large aircraft with any fatalities. So it was the second month of Obama's administration was the last time that there was a fatality, thankfully, in the U.S. So, I mean, the topic of safety, as you said, nothing more important than that, but that's not something that's changed recently in the U.S.
And do we know, are there particular strategies that have really helped improve safety for airlines?
Well, yeah, there are things that even going back just a couple decades, I mean, in the 1990s, a lot of people thought the industry was as safe as it could possibly be. It was rather safe then in historical terms, at a time when you would have, let's say, in the U.S., many years you'd have a major crash that would kill a lot of people. There are things like meteorological changes. There used to be crashes because of wind shear, commonly up through certainly the 1980s. That's unheard of now. And a lot of it is just the way crew members relate to each other. There used to be, confusion sometimes in the cockpit, and some of it is just procedures, more precise ways of talking, and technology, certainly. The industry, really impressive. I don't know that anybody ever thought it could get this safe, not a single, as you said, fatality anywhere in the world in 2007 among commercial airlines.
Now, something that we did see was a bit of a kerfuffle when it came to the reputation of airlines, especially when it came to consumers. We saw a number of issues that went viral with altercations between passengers and staff. What are airlines really doing to try and combat some of that PR nightmare? Yeah,
more of a mixed record. You're right in that regard. Those very visible incidents, which in some cases contradict sort of the more mundane things that are happening. Airlines in some ways are more reliable than they've been in the past, just in terms of punctuality, losing fewer bags, those sorts of things. But the Dr. Dow incident, that was the most famous one, being dragged off the airplane, I think was, although sad for him, helpful in the long term in terms of airlines realizing, look, you have to solve these problems before they happen. When they happen, you have to apologize very quickly, make it right, because that ended up costing United far more than it had to. And then some other airlines also had their issues. Now, heading into 2018, you kind of hope that they've learned the lessons from those and are doing a better job.
Now, let's also look at some of the competition that we're already seeing between Boeing and Airbus, and then you also have China introducing its own models into the fray. How do you see that dynamic working?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people see Boeing and Airbus as kind of the duopoly in terms of full-size jets, and they are, by and large. The fact that China is producing now the C919 is very important, because even if it doesn't turn into a program the size of those that Boeing and Airbus have, airlines want choices. Someday an airline outside China, it's been very well received in China. So far, no major orders outside China, but someday an airline might opt for it. And just the fact that it exists in the marketplace forces Boeing and Airbus to be as good as they can be, both in terms of quality and also price. They have to compete against that.
And let's talk challenges. What do you see as the biggest challenges for the industry in 2018?
Yeah, well, in the U.S., what you have right now is a very strong revenue picture, a very healthy economy. You talked about Delta's numbers, that showed up in the earnings that they released, but pressures on costs. These are airlines. Look, in the U.S., a lot of these airlines took away a lot from employees back when some of them were bankrupt, and sort of promised that, when things got better, that they would indeed make it up to them, and the bill's coming due for that. So pressures in terms of labor costs, fuel costs, although not all that high in historical terms, well off their lows, and that's something that'll impact airlines everywhere. So it's always, profitability always, ends up, I mean, look at any industry, being the difference between the revenues and the costs. You can either have a very strong revenue environment, even if costs are not that great, or weaker revenues and very low costs. So we'll see how it all nets out. Right now, a decent picture overall, but look, this is a shock-prone industry. You're never far away from whether it's a fuel spike or the worst case scenario. I mean, we've seen all kinds of bad things in the past, obviously terrorism and so forth. So those are ever-present threats. You hope they don't have to face them.
Well, thank you so much. Always good to have you on. Seth Kaplan, Managing Partner and Editor of Airline Weekly.